Chris, I just did want to say thanks for agreeing to come on the show and interview with me today.
Yeah, my pleasure.
I don't know how much research you've done into me, but a quick little intro for me. I've been in the pop culture of mostly Batman as a kid, with the animated series and stuff. Then I got into graphic novels I started getting into high school, and then in 2011, when DC did their thing with the New 52, I actually got into collecting comics. And then from there, I've just kind of gone. I was able to join a site called DCComicsNews.com and do reviews for them. So they would send me the digital files on, usually it's like a Monday night or a Tuesday. We'd read them, write a review, and post them. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. And then through them, I was able to go in, interview some creators like Greg Capullo and stuff. And then I eventually hit a point where I was like, I want to do my own thing and not be controlled as much. So I started doing this.
Oh, that's awesome.
Thank you. How about you?
I sort of the same. I grew up with like He-Man and Ghostbusters and Ninja Turtles. I'm like born in '79, right? So I got all the '80s in there. And then like animated series was huge for me. Sort of in that grade 6, 7, 8 time for me, and so that was really formative for me. And then I would go to the comic book store and buy, or not even the comic book store, but like Chapters or whatever. Like, oh, this looks like a good standalone graphic novel. This looks like a good one. And then the same deal when DC Comics relaunched with the New 52. I was like, okay, like I'm an adult and I got money to spend, and let's get in on this. So I bought not the whole line, obviously, but like Batman, Superman, Nightwing, Wonder Woman. And I had the Batman and Nightwing come monthly, and then the other ones I would just wait till the collections came out and buy those.
Oh, right on. Yeah. Yeah, no, honestly, that was the same for me. I did a lot of I tried to get as many Batman books as I could.
Right.
And then as the trades came out, like actually sitting beside me on a bookshelf, I've got Superman and Action Comics from New 52 Volumes 1.
Right.
And so basically it sounds like we did the same thing, which is awesome.
Yeah.
And for the people that are out there watching, you don't have to get super specific, but I appreciate you are Canadian, correct?
Yes, I am.
Wonderful. And where in the country are you located?
Well, up until about 2 months ago, I was in Ontario, Peterborough. I spent most of my life around there, nearly 30 years. And then we decided with the whole COVID, like, let's hit reset and like relaunch with a new issue, and we moved to Nova Scotia. So I'm in Nova Scotia right now, just 20 minutes outside Halifax. Yeah.
That is super cool. And so, was it just COVID and you guys were like, you know what, let's just make a big change and go for it?
Kind of like because we were sort of freed from work, freed from all of these things. So I was like, okay, like what do we really want to do with life? And this Ontario's great, like whatever, but we were sort of running the rat race. Like, okay, we gotta make sure we make this much money and do this and do this, and then to be able to move out here, the housing markets are very like whoop. So it's just not as stressful of a lifestyle out here. You can sort of like I work and that's good, and I get paid, and bills are paid, and live by the lake in a nice house and everything. So it's something we couldn't afford in Ontario at all.
Okay. And just out of coincidence, my father, who's he's getting up there in years, getting near retirement. Him and my mother are considering actually making a very similar move. So they've looked at housing prices. I think they were looking at New Brunswick as opposed to Nova Scotia. But yes, from what I've seen, the cost differences are like way different. So I'm assuming you guys pretty much like sold the house or whatever you had here, packed up the car or whatever, and just booted out there.
Yeah, pretty much. We went when we moved to the house in Peterborough. We moved from like out of town into town, and it took two 26-foot trucks to make that move. Whoa. And then when we moved out here, one. So we're leaving this behind. We're leaving that behind. The truck was full, like Tetris full.
Oh, wow.
And, we drove out, and we took 3 days to drive out. We took our time, and my dad helped drive the truck and everything, and let's do this. And there was a few have we done the right thing? Oh my god.
Well,
but it's working out so far, anyways. 2 months into it.
Perfect. Well, I'm glad to hear it. I do also got to say I like the ink. Very nice.
Yes, it's one of a few. The Flash is there.
That's cool.
And Batman and Wonder Woman are up here.
Oh, very cool. Right on. Love it.
Yeah. Thanks.
So basically the main reason that we're talking, you contacted me about doing an interview, and I got myself finally, just yesterday actually, the physical copy came in, although I got the digital. And thank you kindly for the signature as well as... where'd she... There she is. Awesome drawing.
Thanks.
Where did the idea for Omega Squad, your first graphic novel, come from?
Well, so I spent a little time and I drew, like many fans, I'm sure. I drew like a Batman comic and whatever, and I know I'm not going to get hired by DC anytime soon. Let's be honest. But so I did that and had some fun and learned some things, and then I actually drew this page. I drew that picture.
Okay.
Just like on a piece of paper at work. I work as a ECE. Doing at that time doing before and after school care with kids.
Okay.
So we were just sitting around the table and everyone's drawing, and I drew that, and I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. And I was reading Justice League United at the time. It has Adam Strange in it, and there's sort of some similarities there to the Adam Strange outfit a little bit, and I was like, oh, that looks pretty cool. I should do something with that. And I had some time on my hands around then, and so the first book was just 12 pages, because that prints out nicely on a laser printer with a center page that is the double spread. So you'll notice there's a double spread every so often, and that would be the the easily folded open page in a 12-page book.
Nice. Hey, it works, right?
Yeah, and that's where that came from. And at the time, I was doing just sort of local comic conventions in Oshawa and Pickering and Coburg and stuff. And I would have like the photocopied at work print-offs of my book and sell them for a couple bucks.
Perfect. Yeah. I mean, it's a start, right? Had you ever drawn... in any capacity, like professionally before, I'll say? No.
I've been drawing a long time. My childhood friend, my longest childhood friend, Matt, he's an incredible artist, and he does all sorts of freelance computer graphic stuff now. But way back in grade 5, somewhere in a box in this house, because we haven't unpacked everything.
Oh, never will.
It's like a magazine. Yeah, it's like a magazine thing we made in grade 5 or 6 with some really terrible drawings that I did and some pretty good ones that he did at the time, because we were 11 years old or something.
Yeah.
And that was my first drawing, but I really started to get back into that kind of thing with the relaunch of the New 52s. Like, oh, comics, and I was taking in comics, and then I wanted to put out comics. So I spent a lot of time sort of getting better at drawing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I mean, even just sort of picking it up, what I noticed a lot, so I noticed a lot about the book, and there's a lot of actually really fun stuff I want to cover with you.
Okay.
But because you've got to collect, like I've gone through the digital that you sent me. Me, I'm more of a paper guy, so actually having the book here is like, oh, a blessing. But one thing, because I'd read the digital first, I wanted to treat myself. Like the cover art is really polished. Your line work there is good. The coloring is solid. I feel like this was done a little digitally, if not completely.
Usually I do like a pencil drawing first, like almost everything. So here's almost the end of the second volume.
Oh.
So I draw it all in pencil first, because I feel like I draw better that way. And then I sometimes it's on the scanner, and sometimes like for the cover, I think I just took my phone and like took a picture of that on the table, and then I have a tablet and just like a Samsung Tab Pro.
Yeah.
And I do all my line work. All the digital work happens on there.
Well, yeah, because you can port it in, crop what you need, and start coloring in. That's awesome.
Right.
And
yeah,
because I've read a lot of comics in my life now. I have read from, like super published DC, high, capacity, major funding, all that kind of stuff, right down to an interview I did with the Canada Comics Open Library, where a gentleman that I interviewed, Jordan, was basically like self-publishing, hand-drawing everything. So I've seen it all. I think that's really, you used your tools, which is great. And I think that's fantastic. And yeah, a lot of artists, like heck, even DC guys will draw, scan, and color.
right.
So the one thing that I really noted, and it hit me really big, just to see, frankly, the level of improvement that you had as an artist. I treated myself to the very first panel, and then after having read the whole thing, right, I did this for myself. I went back and I was like, okay, now show me the last panel. And the actual level of improvement was like, okay. So, like you said, you'd never really drawn professionally. You just kind of drew this really cool character, and you were like, I want to do something with that. And I think it's great that you literally have this beautiful printed book, hand-drawn, and then scanned and all that good stuff. I think you did a lot of fun with it. And I definitely, when I was reading it, what I liked, and I'm going to have you talk about a little bit of this, it felt like it was just packed with a love of the medium, but also 80s and 90s like pop culture. So like you already touched on Ghostbusters and stuff like that. So what was a lot of that stuff that informed you? What were like your favorite shows, your favorite comics, like growing up, but even now?
Yeah. Okay, yeah, growing up, like I was that, like He-Man was my first love. He-Man. I had a bunch of toys, and I had the castle, and I watched the show, and
awesome.
I played He-Man, and then it was Ghostbusters, and I had the firehouse, and I had the guy,
awesome,
all that, and then it was Ninja Turtles, and then Batman the Animated Series, and that's like I still watch that. It's on like Teletoon Retro or something like that.
Good to know.
And PVR records it, and I'm like, oh, like I got half an hour to kill. I'll watch Batman.
Awesome.
And so there's that. And then I watched a bit of Sailor Moon as a teenager. Yeah. Sailor Moon was great. And G.I. Joe. I wasn't a big. I didn't have a lot of the G.I. Joe toys, but I watched the show.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that was cool. And like Cobra Commander and all that with the faceplate.
Yes.
Yeah, he was social distancing before it was cool.
Yes, he was. Cobra Commander, social distance, everyone.
Right, and along the one comic I remember having of like superheroes at the time as a kid, I had like it was like only like a novel size book, like not like a novel size book, like a word novel size book. The Untold Legends of the Batman. And I got that from Scholastic, like in grade 3 or 4.
One of those book fairs, right?
Yeah. And so that was like the only Batman book I had for a long time, and it has his parents get killed, and he's like sort of fighting with himself, like an image in the mirror. I don't remember a lot of it. It has like the first Joker story in it. I think it's a collection book. I think
so. Kind of lets you know. Yeah, it gives you like the brief history of Batman's history.
Right, yeah. And so that was sort of the only comic I had then. And then I went to university in Toronto. And I say that very loosely because I didn't actually go to university very often.
So you enrolled, you paid tuition, and you went to a few classes.
Yeah. I spent more time at Silver Snail than I did anywhere else.
Yep.
So, and it kills me to think back now to go there, and I had all this OSAP money that should have gone to other things. And I'd look at stuff in the store and be like, oh, I should buy that. It'd be really cool. It was like $100 or something. No, I can't buy that. I'll buy like this book or that. It's $10. That's way better. And I did that like 100 times, so I could have bought that.
Yeah, really.
But my friend Matt, again, he pointed me to Kingdom Come. He's like, you should read Kingdom Come. And I was like, oh. And so that's where, like, I didn't become a collector of like monthly issues of comics, but that's where I became like a collector. This graphic novel looks cool. I'm gonna buy it and read it. And it was always DC. I watch all the Marvel movies and stuff, and they're awesome. They're great. Love them. But I don't think I own a single Marvel comic. But,
you know what?
Yeah.
I get that. Yeah. Like
RDJ, Iron Man, like that's good enough for me.
Yeah. No, like for me, it's funny you mentioned Kingdom Come. Again, I have that right there.
Yeah.
Like for me, it was Hush, and then Justice. Right. I ended up picking up, and then Grant Morrison's Arkham Asylum. But yeah, absolutely. I feel like if we had known each other, it would have been the same shows, the same books. We'd have been like, oh, hey. No, I absolutely get it. So you go from there, spending your OSEP money, probably where you shouldn't, which, I mean, hey, we all did. Let's be honest.
Right, exactly. That's what it's for.
Yeah. And then you primarily lived in and around the GTA, right? Like you said, Peterborough area for a while?
Yeah. Yeah, I lived there for... we moved from Aurelia when I was turning 10 that November, and then lived there for 30 years, almost exactly, actually.
Oh, wow. And then now you're out east.
Now I'm out east, yeah.
Super cool.
Yeah.
So, yeah, as you mentioned earlier, you drew the panel, which I believe is on the second or third page, and you kind of ran with it. And as you mentioned earlier, for your medium that you're using, primarily pencil on paper and then scanning or, capturing the photo.
Well, yeah, now it's that, yeah.
I was going to say, yeah, what's the process? Like, how did you create the book?
Okay, yeah. So the first book, I drew. I do all my drawing almost exclusively on just cardstock, like 100-pound cardstock.
Oh, nice.
8.5 by 11 paper. So it's just thicker.
Yeah.
And so everything in this got drawn in pencil, and so you can see, and I've noticed this more looking in this big book than I did at the time. The first few pages are colored really heavily. It's all black and white now, but it's colored really heavily because I colored them with Copics in color.
Oh, wow.
I was like, maybe I'll do this in color. And then it's like, this is really expensive to do this in color with Copic markers. So for putting it into this format, I just bought like the Michaels brand packs. I think there's 6 markers in a pack of gray, like so light to dark gray, and then I colored the whole rest of the book. After more than half of it was done, well more than half of it was done with those markers. I went back and recolored all that stuff, and then finished. Because I started writing this one, the first issue of it was in 2016, and it took me almost 4 years to finish it, to 100 pages or so. Yeah, and so now, that was all. Everything you see in that book is by hand, pencil, ink, marker. And now the second book is I'm doing the pencils and then scanning and then doing the digital.
Yep.
To color.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Do forgive me, the connection broke a bit, so we got the markers. You used the 6 Michaels markers. So the actual drawing was done on 100-pound paper by pencil, correct?
Yep, in pencil first.
Perfect. And like you said, the first one was 2015-16, so it took about 4 years to get your first. Is that the first issue, or is it the first volume, the whole book?
So the first issue was in 2016. So it was just like the 12-pager thing, and then it was sort of set up where I did the first 5 issues, first 5 12-page issues, and that ends right where the station gets blown up.
Yep. Okay.
And so that happened in a fairly regular schedule. Like, those 5 issues were done probably like late 2017.
Okay.
So not monthly, because it's not my main job,
Well,
but you know. And then the next sort of 3.5 issues that finished the book took a long time. Partly because my job changed and I didn't have as much spare time in the middle of the day, and just sort of life got in the way. And then what happened was, and there's an acknowledgement in the front of the book. I met a guy at I think it was at the Ajax Toy-Con first that I met him, Jerome Cabanatan. He's got a book on Amazon as well. Well, and he's like, "Oh, I published my book on Amazon." And I was like, "You can do that? Like, I don't have to buy like 1,000 copies of my book up front." And he's like, "No, it's just print as you go,
digitally."
And I was like, "Well, then I need to finish my book." And I did so at that point, everything's in just line work on paper, and the last almost 20 pages don't exist, and that's sort of May of 2020.
Oh, so
I'm like,
you
okay,
sat down and like,
I'm getting this book out. And I drew 20 pages and inked them and colored them and recolored the whole rest of everything, and then redid all the word bubbles and put out a book.
Wow, that is a lot of work, sir.
And it was about 2 months or 6 weeks, I think. Yeah.
So from making no comic to I drew something that I really liked, and then over 3-year period doing a couple 12-page issues, and then in the last couple of months from this year, really, you ripped through, finished it up, and now I'm holding this book. That's wild.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Right? Like, that is super cool. So congratulations, because that is a heck of a lot of work. It's not like you had no job and you're just sitting here and drawing all day. You do that while you're working a full-time job, having a life, doing everything else that everyone's doing, which is, it's an accomplishment. And I don't think a lot of people that aren't in the business of comics, because that's what you are now, you're in the business of comics, they don't see that, right? Like, yeah, so I think that's, congratulations, one, it's fantastic on your part. Now, you, like you said, you started with this cool drawing and a bit of a love of Adam Strange. Where did the story come from for Omega Squad, without giving too many spoilers?
Where did it come from? That's a really great question. I think you can see in the book there's a lot of draw from some other space franchise,
and exists. I love it. So
like, I'm definitely a Star Wars guy, right? I had like the 3 original movies on VHS, and
did you have the gold box, or did you have them as individual VHSs?
So here's a great story. My dad was a teacher.
Mm-hmm.
He's retired now. He can't get in any trouble for this anymore.
Okay, that's cool.
And he would bring home a second VCR every once in a while from the school, and we would go rent or check out a few movies from the library.
I see where this is going.
And I would have them to watch later. And so my copies are actually bootlegs. And, to be fair, I then eventually did buy the THX version, and then I bought them on DVD, and then I've bought them on Blu-ray. So, like, George has got his money.
Yeah, really. Like, I think George Lucas is fine.
Yeah, exactly.
For those people watching who don't know what Chris just alluded to, if you're perhaps not old enough, you used to be able to take a VCR which was a machine that played a cassette.
Oh,
well, not
yeah,
a cassette
right.
tape.
Still
Right,
going
you got to
existing.
think about this now, because I'm realizing now that I'm getting older. I'm like, oh, wait a minute, people don't know what that is. Like people call it the
Yeah.
save button instead of a floppy disk. Used to basically be able to copy a movie using 2 VCRs. You put the movie you wanted to copy in one, hook it into the next one, and then you could pick a blank VHS, pop it into that one, and record them over each other. And that way you had your movie. Which is ingenious,
Yeah.
by the way. I love it. Go to the library, get the movie for free, copy it, you've got it. Great.
Yeah.
So yes, as you were mentioning, so it is highly influenced by Star Wars, and it's one of them anyway. You've got a beautiful nod in some of the armor that the antagonistic army uses, which was beautiful, by the way. One of the things that actually really caught my eye about this was clearly how much you love, as I mentioned, pop culture, Star Wars. A few other things that I caught, Bert and Ernie were fabulous. I saw them immediately, and I just like, oh my god, did he really? And then you just outright went with it. That was great. And some of the other things I did want to ask, so it's early on, so I'll show it. There's a ship. Where is it? There she is. So there is this wonderful ship here.
Oh.
And when I saw it, I immediately thought of Super Metroid. Now, was that the intent, or was that just a design happens? Yeah, I thought so.
Yeah.
This.
Well, I needed a reference, right?
Yes. See, one thing that I think, Chris, that you knocked the park out of this with this book was you clearly love pop culture, and you're not afraid to show it. I've seen other artists from as high up as DC to local Toronto guys or girls doing their thing and sliding in a sly reference, and you're like, is that? It's kind of a cool hint. What I liked is you were just unabashedly just like, here, by the way, check this stuff out because this is cool. And
Right.
honestly, it made the book. You mentioned earlier, art right now is not your strong suit. You've had a lot of improvement. I look forward to volume 2. But what I found was just the amount of, I guess, camp, I'll call it, as well as all these cool references really carried me through the book. And I was like, I want to meet these characters. I want to see what's going on.